In the first hour, we showed portions of the tour of Nigeria, Congo-Brazzaville, and the southern African nations of Angola, Botswana, and Mozambique. And this hour, Zambia, Tanzania, and Zimbabwe.
I was shocked when the president, out of his mouth, said these words. It is only black killing black. He said that himself. Does that mean that he will act only when the black starts killing white? We don't want to do that. Really, these slave conditions, slave relationships can be detected at every level. Every level. So, you come here, I'll be meeting you later on. I thought I should just make those remarks. We'll be having detailed discussions. He has pointed out, they are not communists. But the West, not West, leaders, Reagan administration, the Thatcher administration, the Kohl administration, see in every bush in Southern Africa a communist. Every bush they see a communist there. I've tried to explain to them, look, Oliver Tambo comes to State House, we have lunches together, dinners together. This man is with me in State House now, dining together. Sometimes I say grace, sometimes he says grace. Where do you find a communist saying grace? Really, these are very painful things, my dear brother, very painful indeed. Because I don't know whether it is understanding, as you are saying. I'm taking it that it's because I'm black. I'm not bitter, I'll never be bitter. Because if I become bitter, I lose my judgment, sense of judgment. I'll never be bitter in this. But I weep because sensible people are unable to see the truth in this. Is it a matter of choice? Is it deliberate, or what is it? But I'm telling you, I'm seeing on the horizon, my dear brother, catastrophe. Catastrophe on the horizon. It's coming. It's a matter of time now. Time now. The explosion is taking place. And thousands, hundreds of others will perish. Why must that happen? Because we fought against Nazi Germany. We did. Now another Nazism is on the horizon in South Africa. Reagan administration, constructive engagement. Thatcher administration, sanctions don't work. They apply sanctions against Libya recently. Against Libya recently. The planes took off from Britain, American planes, Reagan planes from British Thatcher's territory. 2 of them, sanctions against Libya. When the black man is involved, no sanctions. They don't work. Really, we are very fortunate because the black man is very forgiving. I know of no race, maybe red Indians maybe, I don't know. But really, I know of no race which has suffered like the black man at the hands of other races. We still remain not bitter. And I will never subscribe to anyone who says we should be bitter. Because ours is a just cause. God says we've made man in our image. Whose image? God's image. And God is love. God is truth. Where is the love? In Bota, for Nelson Mandela, for Oliver Tambo, for Nso, for Samuel and his colleagues there. Where is their love? They go to church Sunday. Every Sunday they go to prayer. Which type of God are they doing? Because God is love, God is truth. In any case, We are building better societies. Here in Northern Rhodesia, my dear brother, if you came during that time, you would have been with me in a compound somewhere. Never where you are now. Because hotels were out of bounds for you, the likes of you and me. Here, Northern Rhodesia, out of bounds. Post offices, everything. Hospitals, there was black malaria, white malaria. Here in Northern Rhodesia. Huh? White pneumonia, brown pneumonia, black pneumonia. Different hospitals. Even when we died, there was a graveyard here, a graveyard for black people there. We never mixed on this earth, never. Here, Northern Rhodesia, the British colonial power was here, where we established a more civilized society, I'm glad to tell you. We are mixing freely black, white, yellow, and brown. If the good Lord in his wisdom had made some people green, they would have been accepted here. He hasn't yet. When he makes them, if he does ever, they will come here. And they'll be accepted so long as they've got a human soul in them, God's soul in them. We are building a more civilized society. Go to Zimbabwe, same thing. Tanzania, same thing. You've been in Angola, Mozambique. After bitter struggles, white people are still happy there. We are building better societies. Yet the Reagan administration, the Thatcher administration, the Kohl administration will not see this at all. Why? Is it a lack of understanding or something deeper? Is there something deeper or is it just lack of understanding? You have queried this. I've said you've got people who are thinking, people with boards, black, white hair, in computers today, help them to think. Can't you see what's happening in Southern Africa? It is bloodshed of the West type. Africa is our motherland, fashioned with and blessed by God's good hand. Let us all people join as one, brothers under the sun, all one, strong and free. One land and one nation is our tribe. Dignity and business and justice, like a noble eagle in its flight. Zambia, praise to thee, all one, strong and free. Praise be to God. Praise be, bless our great Zambia.
But this one, this is too kwacha, this one. Hey, man, you want to buy this one? This one kwacha. Let's buy this one. Wonderful. Yeah, okay. This one's selling a good kwacha there. Yes, 50 kwacha there. Yeah, 50 kwacha. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, wonderful.
Jody!
Okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Three kwacha. Tuendelee Lubango hiyo.
Akukopa iwe. Ukapezeka ku Britain manje.
This morning, as I watched you sisters being bloused, and watched and listened to your glorious celebration, I thought about my grandmother back in South Carolina, whose foreparents came from Africa, who survived the rape of Africa, who survived the long river passage on the ships across the Atlantic Ocean, when our family were torn asunder, were taken to a strange land. They arrived in America. It was illegal for a black child to be named after his or her black father, because only men could give their names to children, and blacks were not considered men. You see me today as a friend, a brother beloved, a son who has returned home. And I must tell you, my friends, that Jesse Jackson is my third name. I'm an adopted child, born to a teenage mother, never slept in my father's house a night in my life. Adopted when I was 12 years old. Some of the old slaves taught us deep in the South, it's all right to change your name. There's another power. We've come a mighty long way, and our suffering has made us stronger. Better, not bitter. Suffering breeds faith in the real sense, and faith breeds suffering. And then suffering breeds character in the end. Character and faith will not disappoint. This morning we went out to the place where the South Africans had bombed, right here in Zambia. As we looked, at first, Dr. Kalula, I was a bit depressed. My first feeling was we had been told a lie. In America, they said on television that there were some ANC terrorists on the border about to strike South Africa. We found the camp was an unarmed Christian refugee center about 400 miles from the Namibian border, and that's a long ways from South Africa. And then they showed pictures on television in America of a swimming pool, an area where the attack took place. The picture they showed on television did not resemble the place where they bombed. They never told us that the people there from Uganda, on their way to Australia, Canada, America, unarmed Christian refugees just looking for a home. They never told us, and so I felt a bit betrayed by the media. Then I looked and I saw bomb craters. I saw bullet holes in walls. And then I asked in the camera board for 100 people, how many died? They said a little girl died, injury, Kira died. More than 100 people in that camp. How did these two planes with bombs and retro-firing bullets from jets miss all of these people? Give me a scientific explanation. Give me a technological explanation of why unarmed people in a camp in the middle of a field could miss being blown to smithereens by bombers with long-forward miles for the mission to kill them.
But even now, we stand where technically efficient bombers, hired assassins, would destroy their people, would have leveled a village of 100, and yet at the instant of their flight, a stiff wind blew and blew death away and allowed life to be sustained. And we thank you today because you are still in control of the wind. And the same wind that blew those bombs away will blow apartheid away, will blow both away, just like it blew away Pharaoh and Herod and Hitler. The arc of the universe is long, but it bends toward justice. We rest assured that you are our God, and above thee there is none other. And if we have the faith, you have the power.
Are getting strangled every day by South Africa. It's awful. You come over here and we meet with a number of the various leaders from the different nations, and they are so pleased to see that Americans care, and that there's more than just the administration point of view in the United States. I mean, it's not a game. It's not like you sit in the United States and you say, okay, you let Mandela out and it's all over. It's a lot deeper than that. People are starving. I mean, South Africa is cutting off shipping, cutting off food supplies. They are killing people every single day. They're making it impossible for African children to have education. They're making it impossible for people to eat over here. I think Reverend Jackson deserves a tremendous amount of credit because Reverend Jackson is over here, let's be honest, doing what President Reagan should be doing.
Sir Pretoria must be seen as an octopus who has extensive holdings in Angola, Namibia, to that extent Lesotho and Swaziland too. Now, which means that when the U.S. begins diplomatic talks with Angola and sees that we have more interest in a wholesome relationship with Angola and no longer supports Zimbabwe and sabotage and drive South Africa out of that country, that's a sanction on South Africa, because that's one of the legs of the octopus. When Dos Santos and Reagan meet and we make good on our commitment to negotiate the liberation of Namibia, the South African troops leave the border and that base. The Cuban troops are no longer welcome. welcome because they're no longer needed. And Namibia's independence is another form of sanction. Every time another state relates to America directly, as in Angola, are freed of colonialism, as in Namibia, those in fact are severe sanctions because they impose another limitation on South Africa's empire. When we commit ourselves to defend the southern front in Africa as we do the western front in Europe, that's a sanction. Third point is U.S. defends allies on every continent except Africa.
Glad to see you here. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Marhaba, Ariel.
Do you know this?
I know this one.
Ambassador Blankson from Nigeria.
Glad to meet you. You've been to Angola,
Well, Nigeria, the Congo, Angola, Botswana, Mozambique, Michelle. Well, that's an experience all by itself. To Zambia.
And Zambia.
And now to, we're now at Nairobiville, Tanzania.
And you haven't been to Zimbabwe?
We're going to Zimbabwe next.
You are going to Zimbabwe from
But
here.
we heard that the gateway to Zimbabwe was through you.
I think the Americans are very ignorant about Africa. They know very little about Africa. And this sort of visits will help to enlighten them a little about Africa. And it's a very good thing that he has come. And the best part of it is has come with people like you, reporters, so that you could help educate the people of America about Africa. So we thought, here we are. There are people who know what colonialism is like, and they will come forward to help us get our own independence. And what they are doing now, they are on the side of the oppressors. They're on the side of the South Africans who are denying the Namibia of their independence or various means, and at the same time they are killing our own people. This great country, the American people, who are the champions of human rights, the champions of freedom, they are the very people who are now helping those, the very people who are trampling under their foot.
We built it before my retirement because I thought I was going to spend my time here as chairman of the party here. And but as I was telling you at lunch, I'm spending more time at the home village than here. Your government has allied itself to South Africa, to racism. Let me put it bluntly. We have now in Southern Africa one enemy, and that is apartheid South Africa. And your country is allied, your present government is allied We want the message across to the United States. This is wrong. Who put it there? I think you've come here to the right time, because we really want to put this message across. The battle has been joined now. We want it to be as bloodless as possible. Your country and the Europeans can help us to make it as bloodless as possible by applying economic sanctions. Help us to use non-military means in defeating apartheid. And when we call for sanctions, that's exactly what we are calling for, because the choice is military means applied by people who at present are not armed, and non-military means which can be applied by the international community, led by the West, led by the United States. Your country joined the United States, it joined the Soviet Union in fighting Hitler. We want allies in fighting racist South Africa. You have the choice. We're not asking for arms from the West. We're simply asking for the economic means that you have. That's all we're doing. If we don't get it, the struggle in Southern Africa is going to be very long. And we can't win without arms. At present, only South Africa is armed. In that struggle, South Africa is armed. The people are not armed. Daily, the South Africans are shooting people, unarmed people, and killing them. If you don't help us, we can't win without arms. We can't win with the one side armed, the other side unarmed. Eventually, we will have to establish a balance. And if you can't help us economically, you are not likely to give us arms. So we'll turn to the communist bloc for arms. And then you'll condemn us.
As the spiritual godchild of Hitler, is more dangerous and more bold. For Hitler engaged in a policy of genocide in the dark, in the trains, at night, up in the hills, away from public view. It was very late in the war when they discovered Hitler's, in fact, death camps and inhuman schemes of genocide against people. Both engaged in policies of genocide in the broad daylight, before the cameras of the world. Unprecedented arrogance. He's a threat to the human race. Both the highs, more power than Hitler. For he has nuclear power. Thus, he's a threat not just to the African race, but to the human race. We were told before we left, Angola was so locked up by Gorbachev, they didn't have the option of reaching out to diplomatic relations with all the nations of the world. We put the proposition to President Dos Santos. He said, hey, I want to meet with Mr. Reagan and argue my own case. I want the frontline leaders to meet with him. We want diplomatic ties, trade relations, and respect. We want Namibia freed. South Africans and Cubans can go home. We want to live in peace and spend our energies developing our country. America and Angola can have good relations, not through sabotage, Zambia and South Africa, but through mutual respect, which is the basis of any wholesome relationship. It is immoral, utterly immoral, to leave Namibians enslaved while arguing about a matter in the inner circles of a sovereign country. It's not fair. We were with the Namibian Institute just this past Saturday in Zambia. SWAPO is going to emerge victorious in Namibia. It's not a matter of whether, just a matter of when. It will not be long. SWAPO will not bow, will not give up. And they're the legitimate representatives of the people of Namibia. 2 weeks ago, there was a press conference in Chicago led by President Reagan. Someone asked me, you employ sanctions against South Africa? He said, no, because of my concern for people in Southern Africa. All right? But if you have this concern about people in Southern Africa and sanctions, why would you impose sanctions on Zimbabwe about a matter of manners and protocol? That's Southern Africa. It would make so many people starve. Well, if you're concerned about starvation, why divert $200 million in African relief food money to Honduras and Costa Rica and say there's no more starvation and the drought crisis is over in Africa? If you're concerned about the hurt of people in Southern Africa, why not restrain South Africa from expansionist tactics of economic and military terrorism? He said, well, you must understand the fundamental difference between South Africa and the Sandinistas in Nicaragua. There's a fundamental difference. It is that the Sandinistas go beyond their borders, sometimes 25 to 30 miles, and South Africa does not. And that's why he needs to come and walk from Pretoria to Cabinda, 3,000 miles further than from New York to California. But we get in the news that South Africa hits a few terrorist targets now and then and preemptive strikes. There is no sense, because of media distortion and deletion, the South Africa is an empire, not just a state. The full intent of controlling air rights, sea rights, currency, minerals, and people from the Cape of Good Hope to all of Sub-Sahara. And if that happens, it will not stop there. It will keep on going. We need the president to visit the region. Vice President, Secretary of State. No American president has ever been to Africa. It's time for a change. You cannot be a competent president without understanding African policy and African options. You can't be competent with no knowledge of the life options of 500 million people. You know, I close on this note. Yesterday morning, we were at St. Paul Church and Zambia was president of that great republic. That was a great feeling. I watched Brother Kayunga and we sat together. About 60 women were brought into a ritual. They were being bloused in the church, a kind of religious ritual, a kind of real commitment to their faith together. As I watched the women go through that process of being bloused and robed, I saw the same process taking place in Zambia I've seen as I grew up in South Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi. As I listened to their rhythms and their chants and watched them sing and watched them shout, I didn't know the language, but I knew the message. For in South Carolina, using different words, they were saying, come by here, my Lord, come by here. Somebody needs you. Very in trouble. Can't do without you. Come by here. Through all of these years of separation, oppression, slavery, colonialism, neocolonialism, concussions, brain damage, schemes, there's still a power. Experiential, cultural power that our oppressors have not been able to stop. Reagan has power, but there's another power that controls the wind. There's another power that controls history. There's another power that controls heritage. There's another power. Just as we buried the pharaohs and the Herods and the Hitlers, both of them join them. Soon and very soon. Freedom now, up for freedom down.
Okay, we now invite three questions.
Brother Jackson, I'm impressed. Quite impressed.
Thank you.
And I'm amazed too. My question is a bit out of the way, but I'm desperate. My question is, could I please have your autograph? Yes, please.
Only if I get a hug first.
If you get her?
A hug and an embrace.
Quite.
We've had another victory. President Mwinya and Chairman Nyerere have checked off on the proposition of the frontline states seeking a summit meeting with President Reagan. We are going from Tanzania now to Zimbabwe. Chairman Nyerere has called Robert Mugabe. We have a meeting set for tomorrow. And there's a sense that something is taking place. There's a level of unity. There is a measure of an offense, a collective offense that's taking place. In this great republic, freed and liberated Zimbabwe, and we look forward on tomorrow meeting with Prime Minister Mugabe.
Well, the feeling is really that we need some dialogue. The situation here demands that we talk to as many people as possible, to as many countries as possible. We have maintained a kind of contacts on a bilateral basis with Washington. Chester Crocker, Mr. Wisner, and all have visited us. But we feel time has now come for the frontline states as a group to make an approach to President Reagan. I'm sure he will be responsive on that subject. In the case of Britain, West Germany, and to some extent the United States. There are vast investments in South Africa. And they do not want the flow of their dividends and profits to be interrupted. And some industries in their countries might very well be dependent on these outflows of dividends and resources from South Africa. And so to them, the economic benefits outweigh benefits in the sphere of human rights, and we do not understand that. We don't accept it either. Then, too, of course, there is the racial factor. Those in power in South Africa are white, and Margaret Thatcher, in my opinion, is a racist. I would want to say the same about the present administration in Washington. I don't think they would have behaved in the same way had the reverse situation prevailed in South Africa, with blacks oppressing the whites. I think they would have moved in much more quickly.
Sometime today we're trying to arrange a visit with the Prime Minister to the site where the South Africans bombed. And whenever that would be, we would want to be able to reach you as quickly as possible.
I don't think President Reagan doesn't know that South Africa really goes beyond its borders. Chester Crocker has been here, Wisner has been here, Clark has been here, and Vice President Bush, they all have been here. And there should be a sufficient contingent of educators to him. But if he refuses to be educated on our situation, there is nothing you can do about it. I think there is just that state of mind which refuses to accept that South Africa can do any wrong. I mean, look at the policy of constructive engagement. We've been very critical of it. When it started, South Africa also started intensifying its operations against us. And the more they spoke about constructive engagement, the more destructive South Africa became. You see? And we asked the question, what kind of engagement is this? Even when an issue as clear as the South Africa's invasion of Angola comes up in the Security Council for debate and action, the Reagan administration vetoes the passing of that resolution. And you don't understand. Condemnation of South Africa. If they won't accept that South Africa is wrong, how could you expect them to accept that sanctions must be applied against South Africa? But the starting point is really that we must be in agreement at one on the wrongness of the policy of apartheid. They're quite certain in our own mind that as long as it is Mrs. Thatcher in government or as Prime Minister of Britain, we will not count on them to support us in our endeavor to have effective sanctions against South Africa. The question of land is perhaps one of the most vital issues that has had to face us after the war. The fact of allocating more land to the African community. We still have a greater percentage of the African population operating as peasants in the country. Part of the population of now slightly over 8 million, 6 million are peasants, and they depend on agriculture. And for them to be viable, they have to have viable units of land. And since more land was in the hands of the minority white community here, we had to embark on a process of reallocating some of that land, acquiring it from the whites. Although it was never bought from our ancestors, we are now having to buy it from the children of the of the settlers.
Can we get the other bodies out? You just have...
You raised this morning about an African Defense Force, a continental mobilization. Where is that now?
It has problems. We've accepted it as a principle. The non-aligned, the last summit of the OAU accepted it as a principle and set up a committee to work the modalities of implementing it. But we recognize quite a vast area of possible problems that might arise. We don't speak one language, and our forces will tend naturally to be divided according to the language they speak and the region they come from. Then, of course, the system of training, that also depends on whether your former masters were British or French or Portuguese. And all those aspects would have to be looked at. But they shouldn't be regarded as insurmountable.
This is where the political activity of the nationalist movement was born. The house that you are looking at is Prime Minister Mugabe's own house, which he bought in the early 60s. Now, what you see is what happened, an attempt to assassinate the Prime Minister during the elections in 1980. And the Prime Minister has left it untouched because he wants, I think, to be reminded.
I think the main significant thing, insofar as the American people are concerned, is to convey the message of what is going on here in Southern Africa. In other words, the state terrorism committed by the Pretoria regime inside the country and across the borders, particularly because we are, in fact, in the wake of even more intensified acts of aggression against the neighboring states, if one may be guided by this recent statement by the Minister of Defense, who made it clear a few weeks ago that the regime will not negotiate with the ANC, but will instead attack the leaders of the ANC, even if this means crossing the borders of South Africa.
The two of us have met here at my residence, and I, as Prime Minister of the Republic of Zimbabwe, and the Reverend Jess Jackson, the President of the National Rainbow Coalition, have agreed that, one, apartheid is the root cause of the political problems in both South Africa and in the Southern African region as a whole, and that there would be no peace until apartheid has been completely eradicated. Two, that the evil system of apartheid cannot in any way be reformed. It must be abolished completely, and that all countries should adopt policies consistent with the attainment of this objective.
Shortly afterward, the Jackson delegation headed back to the United States. Like it is hopes that what you have seen helps to deepen your understanding.